This week's episode, I have Sarah Powell. She is a spiritual mentor, psychic medium, and animal communicator, living in Calgary, Canada, with her husband and her two small children. Being born a medium, Sarah has endured many trials, tribulations, and triumphs through life. Taking these all as lessons, Sarah has leaned in and trusted spirit to guide the way and unleash her inner wild woman. Pilot, registered nurse, entrepreneur, and psychic medium, Sarah's pushed herself beyond limitations and continues the journey with spirit every single day. This interview is beautiful as we walk through the journey Sarah has been to get to where she is today. So tune in and I will see you on the other side. Welcome to Float Activity, a place to inspire and empower beings to embrace self-love and self-development for an achievable balance of productivity. I share different ways to come back to your intuition through spirituality, self-care, human design, cycle planning, wellness, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you've been here with me before, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited to join you in this journey as we learn together. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Hi, Kara. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a pretty big fan of float activity.
Yes, thanks. I'm excited to dive in. And my first question for my guests is, what are your favorite self-care practices?
Perfect. I thought about this and then it just popped into my head. It was like my belly dancing. I always, no matter what, every Thursday night, I go belly dancing for 2 hours because it's the one thing that I don't have any other ties to. There's no job that I have to do for spirit and there's no kid managing and there's nothing other than just belly dancing. And that's my self care.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I think that's my favorite why this is my favorite question is like there has never been two of the same answers and this is a first. I love that so much and I think a self-care practice is how we can kind of get out of our mind, shut off those responsibilities around us and like get in our body and I don't feel like there's anything I've ever heard more than belly dancing that really allows that. So like I love that so much.
Thank you.
How long have you been doing that for?
For about a year. Yeah, I was a postpartum, like, few months, and I just thought, "Okay," my husband, I encourage him to go to hockey and meet his friends and stuff, and this was my first thing that I allowed myself after having 2 kids.
My gosh, I love that. I love that. So, yeah, self-care looks different for everyone, and so sometimes it flows with our life what may speak to each person, and, dancing has definitely been something that I have reintroduced myself. It really connects with my inner child. Yeah, it brings me to my present moment. Now, belly dancing has never been a part of it, but I would definitely be interested in, like, signing up for a class to try it because in my mind, I think I can belly dance, but I don't think my body agrees.
There's many times where I'm like, "Why isn't my hip moving?" Or, like, "This is my body's not agreeing today," but it's good. You just get into the flow, and there's nothing else that you have the opportunity to even think about. I'm not thinking about groceries, I'm thinking about how I can move better or do what my body wants to do.
Now you go to a class for that?
I do, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So do you find yourself practicing at home as well, or is it mostly that you save it for when you're at the class?
I have every intention every week of practicing at home, but it's mostly just the Thursdays because life just gets crazy when you have a business and kids and life.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a
1000%.
belly dancing show coming up March 18th, and I am really, really behind.
So will, like, your husband and kids come to watch you for that?
Yeah, but I am doing a surprise dance for him that I've choreographed and dedicated to him, and it's his very first belly dancing song that he ever loved. I'm looking forward to that too.
Gosh, I love that. I can't wait to stay tuned to hear the reaction. That's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I have always loved the idea of someone being a psychic and a medium, and I would love to know more of your story on when you first realized that you had these gifts.
Great. Yes. I was told, I guess, I was born a medium because I've always had this kind of medium psychic connection to the world. I guess my very first memory of interacting with spirit was I was about 4 years old and I was in my room playing by myself and I was in the hospital a lot. And I had a nurse spirit that came to me and we played and she was very caring and interacting with me, or she would just be there, or that kind of thing. And then as I was in grade one, we were writing stories and I wrote about my friend. And my teacher said, "Oh, you have such a great imagination, your imaginary friend." And I was really taken back and I didn't know what she meant. And then it started to come together that, oh, these people are not seen by everybody. So that's kind of how that started.
Is this something that you've kind of delved into yourself? Have you been able to find, like, mentors along the way or taken, like, courses to help strengthen it?
Yeah. Well, when I was a teenager, I was very, very interested in everything and I just wanted to explore. So I did. And my girlfriend and I got into a little bit of trouble and then did some things that we shouldn't be doing and talking to people that we shouldn't be talking to. And we did have a very physical, tangible experience that scared the pants off of all of us. So I squished it right down as so many mediums do in their development. And then I was about in my 20s, my early 20s, I started picking up the divination tools again, with such as tarot cards and pendulums. And then quite recently, when I was pregnant with my son, I did an initiation course with Danielle Sarink, the Squamish medium, for just straight up mediumship. And I was really called to it. And then I ran with it and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so much easier than trying to learn 78 cards of the tarot or, I'm just too lazy for that. I don't got the time. And then last about 2 years, I've just done development course after development course and lots of audiobooks and just kind of putting my feelers into everything.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, and that's something to be said when something really, like, calls to you and then you follow what leads you to strengthen that, and I think that self-development, especially when you're going into your gifts, is just so motivating, and that your children are seeing that, and that, I think that's, like, as a mom, like, that's the most empowering thing that you can do for yourself and for your children, so that's awesome.
Thank you.
I have a question because I can't say that I've ever considered myself a psychic or medium, and I'm not sure you would be the person to answer this, but I figured I would try and ask.
Perfect.
I have had, dreams that have come true, reoccurring dreams that have come true, and I've had people that have passed away come to me in my dreams, and it usually is them what like, very close after they've passed over. It hasn't been where they've been gone for a long time, and I definitely feel that sort of connection. One, is there a way that I can bring that connection closer? Or do you have any advice on how to kind of navigate that at all,
Really.
with the courses and stuff that you've done?
Yes. Especially when we dream about our loved ones, obviously, that very much a connection. I always say that your body and your soul knows exactly what's going on. It's just your monkey brain that gets in the way and says, "Oh no, that's not happening." I've recently started a practice of sleep yoga, which is a Taoist practice. And it's going to sleep. I'm not an instructor. I don't do great with this kind of thing, but there's 2 different ways that you can have this sleep yoga, and it's going asleep very intentionally and with the intention of trying to connect with your loved one or with that idea of your intuition. And when you go to sleep, there's 2 different ways that you can do it where you sort of you take the energy from your feet and then you slowly move it up and you move it up into your brain and you get that energy back into your brain while you're falling asleep. So definitely less connection with our phones. That's something I really struggle with at night. And then also in Taoism, they suggest for sleep yoga to put the bowl of water near your head and do sort of the same thing. And then the water element is what helps bring in your intuition. And then when you wake up in the morning, sitting on the edge of the bed and allowing yourself to digest and actually remember everything that came to you and digesting that throughout the day and asking for more information. And with Taoism, they pretty much they say 40 minutes is the ideal time, but you can meditate for 5 minutes. And they suggest to do those kind of things to just help with that connection and slowing down your monkey brain. So that way you have more space to have these messages come in.
Wow. I feel like you just blew my mind with that because I was like, "Is there something tangible I can do with this?" Because I can usually feel if this dream has some sort of like, "This is going to happen," or "This is just a message." Like, I can usually decipher between the 2, but I haven't figured out how to channel it at all, and I'm gonna have to look into that. My self-development, like, inner that's like my thing, obviously this podcast. And so like I will be connecting with that. So thank you so much
Oh,
for sharing that. That's beautiful.
of course, anytime.
So I would love to hear about your personal journey into the person you are today and maybe how that's helped you into becoming a medium and a psychic.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have quite a story. I'm going to try and keep it short so I don't bore any of your listeners. So I did grow up with a very traumatic childhood. It was very one of my first memories is actually my stepdad being abusive to my mom and myself. So that was my developmental vault in those first couple years. So I that's been a huge part of my development in my 30s is working with all of that shadow side work or whatever they call it, the trauma, that sort of thing. And with doing that, I've really leaned into what my body and my spirit calls for. I also don't know my biological father, so I've always had this yearning for connection my whole life. I really did lean into it more so when I moved out, when I was on my own because I had that freedom. My mother is Catholic, so that kind of stuff is not really talked about. Did more so just personal development and fiddling around while I was under 20. I went to school to be a pilot and worked at WestJet for WestJet is a large airline in Canada for almost 10 years. And then I realized, hey, this is not feeding my soul as well. So then I went back to school and got a degree in nursing. And that human connection is what really helped me understand that I do have this intuition and I do have empathy and I have something more to my soul than just doing menial tasks or anything like that. So then I just leaned right into it. The last 2 years, I've just been saying yes to a lot more things and really just going straight into mediumship and trusting myself and trusting spirit. I always tell people that it's not a matter of spirit showing up, it's a matter of you noticing that they're there. So it's more so just been about me calming myself down and finding out what ways to work through my specific, even just like my body trauma that I have going forward and working forward with myself, my body, my soul and spirit and just honestly finding a mesh of everything that works really well. So it wasn't one specific thing. It was just like a roller coaster of up and down and a lot of learning curves.
Well, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. You know, that definitely sounds like a hard childhood to go through. And as I've like interviewed people with their steps into making them having this connection with spirit, I find that there is always some sort of trauma that's kind of maybe held them back and then propelled them forward. Listeners, I feel like when they hear someone else's story, it actually feels like a connection to them if that speaks to them. So I think sharing your story is definitely not a burden. And I appreciate you being open with that.
Yeah.
And just kind of talking about how you have been following the steps and making that connection with yourself, I think that is the most important thing in someone's spiritual development because if they don't understand how they operate as a person, how what speaks to them, they're kind of going to keep coming into these roadblocks. And so I did look up your human design, and I do find that someone that is on the spiritual path is definitely operating with their human design at some capacity. And so some things that you talked about was feeling if something was right for you, and that would be your sacral inner authority. I also have a sacral inner
Yeah.
authority, and that just means that in your body, you will get either a uh-huh or a uh-uh. And if you don't get either of those, it's a not right now. And so it sounds that like you are leaning into that already. And so kudos to you. But I think again, with that self-awareness that comes to a piece of that, having a sacral, I do feel like once you know it's there, once you start listening to it, it's hard not to. And if you're not listening to it, I do feel like it can turn into like health issues. Like I had, GI issues that I was burnt out. There were so many things happening in my body. And I think it was like if you're not listening to that sacral or that intuition, I feel like that's a big piece of that intuition. It can affect yourself, your health, and all those around you. Knowing that you are built with a yes or a no in your body. And then knowing that I'm sure your children and your husband are probably not built that way. And so I don't know their human designs, but
Right.
I think that was the most empowering thing for me was I know if someone gives me the options, like For example, my husband's like, "What do you wanna watch tonight?" And I'm like, "That's not how I operate. You need to give me 3 choices, and I will tell you if one speaks to me, and if one doesn't, then you get to decide. I don't have that in me." My husband is an emotional authority, and he needs time to process it, and he's always told me that. He's always known that about himself, but, like, it wasn't until I looked at his human design where I realized that he doesn't instantly know if it's a yes or yeah, that's one way of that you are living with your human design, are a generator. And so your goal is to listen to your gut and build things. And so you're meant to transform ideas into something tangible and enjoy the process without rushing through life. Because if you feel like you have to get something ASAP, that is very unhealthy for your design energetically. So, how does that feel knowing these things that you're kinda doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's, it feels good. It feels really good. But it definitely is me to a T. Like, I definitely get that very strong "yep" or "no," and it right there, and it's not anything I can ignore, and if it's not there, then it's like, I don't know all the time because I'd rather say I don't know than commit to something and then have to go back on it, and I almost guarantee that my husband and my children and all my family would ask if that sacral part was sassiness, if that's where that came from, but I think that's just a part of Sarah's design, not human design.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I definitely am a generator too, and I push, 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 I create. Like right now I'm creating 2 businesses at the very exact same time, and it's a lot, but I it really easily gets burnt out for sure, so I
yeah,
crave all of that.
yeah. I would just say, my suggestion is when you start to feel frustrated, that is your sign to take a step back and say, "What am I forcing right now?" Because I can attest to someone building a business for the last few years. While there are steps for you to have a successful business that business coaches suggest that you need, there's so many times where I made things way more complicated than it needed to, that if I just kind of sat back and said like, "Ooh, my body is saying that this isn't necessary right now," or to even say, "Hey universe, if this is meant for me to work on right now, make it easy." And show me the way. And I've had people in my life come out of nowhere to help me with these things or even apps to help me with these things. And so that would just be my suggestion to not get you to the point of burnt out because the one thing that's really hard is once you commit to something, it's really hard for you to take a step back. And so just being aware, and it sounds like you're aware of not committing to things that don't light you up, but that frustration, that's your sign of being like, am I forcing something?"
I
Does that make
definitely agree
sense?
with that, yes.
If you want to learn more about human design, I have a free interactive workbook at karadempsey.com/hd. This workbook will help you decode your human design so you can start tapping into how you're uniquely made and that power that's within you. By unlocking and using your human design chart, you're able to connect and understand and honor your soul while increasing harmony and success in your life. Once you know what powers your energetic circuitry, you will have the self-awareness tools to engage in your highest perspective. Human design supports, empowers, and aligns your relationships, career, and home life. It's time for you to look within at how powerful you are and show up as your authentic self. Head to karadempsey.com/hd to get yours today. Okay, perfect. Another piece of your human design is that you are a 2-4 profile. And ultimately, that 2 line that means you are selective or you're an introvert. And so that you have a need for alone time so that you can feel what feels good to you and then follow that. But then that 4 piece is that networker or that opportunist. So that means you have a need for expansion and a deep wanting to share your knowledge with your community. And so I feel like you are stepping into that. So,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
I love that.
So, I know that you mentioned that you have 2 small kids, and I would love to know how becoming a mom or your children in general have influenced your spiritual path.
Perfect. Well, my husband and I really struggled to have my daughter. We had infertility issues and lots of drugs and interventions. And so while I was pregnant, I was very, very, very conscious of stepping into who I am and how to embrace who I am and what I do so that I can unapologetically be me because that's what I want for my daughter. So she's 3.5 now. So I've tried to continue that. When I was pregnant with my son, I was very, very, very sick and in incredible amounts of pain. I was on opioids for most of my pregnancy and it was just so much pain. And that's when I really did start to lean into the emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect because I had nothing else to do also. I was just laying there all the time, just trying to put in my time so that he was healthy. And then when he was born, it was a very spiritual experience for me because there was so much back and forth of was he going to make it? Was I going to make it? Were we both going to be okay? Was he going to have to go to the ICU? All that kind of stuff. And so I did start to listen to that inner knowing and really trusting what I was getting and trusting that he was going to be okay and trusting just myself too with my skills as a mom and a nurse and all that kind of stuff. And then as he got a bit older, he was very sick. He had RSV and COVID and the flu. And there were 2 times that I resuscitated my baby with my bare hand. Phew. And that is just something that changes a person. It changes a person in its entirety. The second time that we resuscitated my son, it had taken 20 minutes for the ambulance to arrive a few months before. And that is a very long time when your baby's not breathing on their own. So then last time, then I just got my husband up because he was starting to go to sleep. Got my husband up, he held my son, and then I drove like a bat out of hell to the hospital in a few minutes. And it's very strange because the way that I remember everything very removed. Like it's almost like I'm in third person. And I feel like I really was supported through all of that. I really, really was. And then like even just watching it and replaying it in my brain because there's so many things that trigger that, especially, that was September and now it's March. So it wasn't too long ago. I just remember them crawling on top of me and giving him an IV and resuscitating him again and just, try leaning on my husband and leaning on spirit and anyone that would hold me. And it was quite a journey. And then when we went forward we did go to the children's hospital after that, obviously. And there was so many prompts and so many little taps on my shoulder. And for some reason, I don't know why, I asked my husband to bring a journal. And I immediately had journal prompts in my brain. And it was way too early for me, but it was the day after the experience. And I journaled about it and I journaled about how I felt through everything. And to me, it was just so empowering and it was so much strength that I never knew that I had. Just the dichotomy of having to be completely still and leaning over my son's crib, willing him to take a breath to just sitting there by myself and journaling. It was and being empowered by spirit. It was such a weird balance, but it really helped me see that I am supported and that there are answers and there are people on the other side that are just there to help. And I do have that connection to them. And I just have to, like I said before, I have to be open for it because they're always there. And it was a really, really good reminder that it's not if they're there, if I'm ready for them to be there.
Wow, that's a powerful experience. I mean, it does show that you are divinely supported and that you are very strong and that a mother to have to deal that not once but twice. I mean, oh my gosh, my like love is with you. I like had chills during that whole time and just knowing that like journaling after it's like I know your story will help so many people to know that, like, when you lean into that spiritual connection and know that you are surrounded and loved, and oh my gosh, that's you're so strong.
Thank
So
you.
you're doing an awesome job, and
Thank you.
wow.
It was also a really neat little, I guess you could say neat, intervention because both times that my son stopped breathing, we were already in bed and we were completely ready to go to sleep. And I just had this little reminder or this little pop in my head that said, just look on the kid. And I have this app on my phone and I immediately came up to Logan and I immediately knew he wasn't breathing because our owlet wasn't working that time. So he didn't have any alarms going off. And it was just the fact that I looked at him that 1 second and I raced there. And without that little push, who knows? But I felt incredibly grateful because that's something that was absolutely a divine intervention. So it was just the whole kit and caboodle was a really powerful lesson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's something to be said about that, like, mother's intuition. So powerful that that happened, and again, like, showing that divine support that you have. And, I think the one thing that might be blocking, and not blocking, but I think so many people are so busy in their life that, like, spirit is trying to communicate with them and show that them they're supported, that they're hard on themselves in general, like they're not doing enough. And that, this is like my plea to like finding that connection with yourself so that you can have a connection with that support with spirit around you. And I feel like your story shows that so much. And so again, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with all that.
Thank you.
Who you're connected to spiritually, do you know them? Do you, like, do they have names, or do you feel like there's someone, that has been in your life, but that has passed away? Do you have any insight on that at all?
Yes. Yeah, actually it's something that's really neat to watch on my daughter and my son's baby camera kind of thing. I see spirit in there all the time. They both always have orbs all the time, and I constantly ting with my husband's grandparents. They're always very, very, very present. And it's really, really interesting because I will be feeding my son or having time with my son and he'll be looking off. What are you giggling at? And then I look over and it's like, oh, there's grandpa. Like we had a really good relationship that way. And then my papa, I was really close to him when I was younger and he pops in quite a bit. And it's really funny because when I give other readings to other people in my family, he has a few ways of telling me like, hey, hurry up, let's go. Like, let's get connecting. He likes to knock on the door and flicker the lights when I'm connecting with, like, my cousins and stuff. Like, "Hey, it's my turn. Stop talking." Just a couple different family members like that, and, my one spirit guide, his name is Phil, which I always find really funny because it's not like his grandmaster, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, that's Phil." And he's my mediumship, and he's really funny and crass and gives me a lot of little giggles in the day and stuff like that. So I do try to stay connected to spirit team quite a bit, but it's honestly like very active in our house. And even last night, I got up to go to the bathroom at like, midnight around there. And there was a little visitor and I was just in the dark and I was like, not right now. And I just went back to bed and fell over.
Yeah, I actually that you said that, I got woken up out of nowhere at like 5 AM, and then so I was, like, laying in bed, and I've turned this new practice into like, I used to have a lot of sleep issues, especially, like, around my pregnancy, after my pregnancy, and I just had a lot of issues with it. I think it was me not listening to my intuition, and spirit was trying to be like, "Wake up, you need to stop doing this kind of stuff," and so my sleep has actually gotten way better, but this morning I got up at, like, 5 AM. I do this thing now where I'm like, "What messages do you have for me today?" And it was so weird. Within 5 minutes, my son got up to use the restroom, and he was fine, but I was like, "Hey, bud, it's early. You gotta go back to bed. You have school today." And he's like, "But I'm scared. I want you to lay with me." And so I just honestly felt like spirit was like, "Hey, you're just gonna have to go lay with your son so he could go back to sleep," because normally he would not go back to sleep, and so I went and laid with him, and so I was like, "Was this what spirit was trying to tell me?" And I was
Oh,
like, "I think it was." So,
ah, that's so
um,
sweet.
yeah, yeah, I thanks for sharing about your, do you call them your guides, your angels? What's your name for your team?
Yeah, my guide mainly, and yeah, I just say my team or spirit in general, and because sometimes with a lot of my readings too, I won't necessarily get a person, but it's just like a knowing from spirit in general. So it's not like I can say, "Hey, your sister's over here and she's saying this," but it's a general knowing with a lot of validation. So it's kind of yeah, it's kind of a bit of everything.
Yeah, I love that. I always like to share this little story about my family, and, so it's a little crass, but this is just my family for you. Before my grandmother passed away, she always said that she was gonna come back as a bird and shit on our cars to let us know that she was watching over us. And so my father had passed away, and we came home from the hospital, and there was this little room that he always hung out in, and yeah, there was a bird in there.
Oh,
And so I felt like it was one of those, like, it was obviously a sad day that my dad had passed away, and we were, like, shooken up when we came home, and it brought so much, like, humor that we kinda needed, trying to get this bird out of the house, like, the screen wouldn't open, and so it was just kind of a chaos, especially because this room had, like, normal ceilings and the rest of the house was lofted. So we knew if we opened the door, it was gonna be harder to get the bird out, so there was only one way. And so that
Balls.
was actually that evening was, I would say the first time I really felt like someone that had passed away came to visit me, and it was my dad. But I was, like, scared. Like, I was like, "Oh my gosh." And if you knew my dad's humor, like, he was trying to, like, play around, he was, like, trying to grab my foot, and I was like, "I can't handle this right now."
Yeah.
I think now I would probably be able to, but, yeah, that was, like, my first experience of that, and so birds have always been this, relation to my dad and even both of my grandmothers. I have been in the realm of, like, surrendering. I have this problem with overworking myself, kind of, like, trying to be too productive or being too hard on myself, trying to, like, prove my worth by doing too much is kind of a reoccurring thing that I have, and so I've made this commitment to surrendering to the universe, and I was like, "Show me I'm on the right path. Show me that doing less is gonna give me more." I was in the kitchen and I, like, heard a bird right outside the door, and I was like, "Oh, well, we have a screened-in patio that has a door shut," and a bird started to build a nest up in there, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Aw,
So
that's really what a
that's just
gift.
so I love that. Yeah, I feel like when we're kind of clear and open, those around us will kind of show up. And so, yeah, I guess my family are birds, like my card does usually have bird poop on it more than I would like, but I guess that's just their way to let me know that they're
Yeah,
with me.
yeah.
So,
Hi, Grammy.
yes. How you doing?
Yeah.
So is there something that you can maybe help me and listeners and viewers uncover and strengthen their like spiritual connection with loved ones or just even with their intuition?
Yes. I I love talking about meditation because I feel that a lot of people think that it's this huge commitment. I have to carve out an hour in my day and I have to find the perfect recording or I have to do the perfect thing, but it's such a different modality for everybody. There's ways like I was talking about earlier like the Taoists just sit there and the idea with the breath work is that you are breathing so gently that you can't move a down feather kind of thing. So you can just carve out 5 minutes, 3 minutes to just sit there, close your eyes gently if that feels right, and just focus on your breath. And if I can't quiet my monkey brain, I just follow my breath and I say breathe in and breathe out. And just giving that time to be able to have that silence allows for the moment of spirit to come in and be like, oh my gosh. Oh, hi, you're here now. So it gives that little opportunity for that connection and just having that trust in yourself. And it doesn't have to be a huge practice. Like I think I heard on your podcast as well as when we spoke to, some moms just when they go to the washroom and just sit on the floor or anything like that for a few minutes to have some time by themselves. That's a meditation practice on its own too, because you're just going inwards and you're quieting your brain and your body. So it doesn't have to be this huge practice. And that's really what I'm trying to help people see is that, it doesn't have to be something that's crazy. You can really work it into your life and it changes so much about your life just having that moment of silence and connection.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I can attest to that 1,000%. I felt like it took, like, the lockdown and COVID for me to uncover that, and I ended up having a meditation, and my future self came in and was like, "This is what your life can look like." And I was working at the time, and I was burnt out, and I was like, "Okay, there's no way that I'm could stop doing hair, like, that's the only way I make money." And, fast forward a few months later, and I, like, woke up and was like, "Oh my gosh, that meditation showed me what was possible." And so that's kind of the inspiring thing for me is, like, spirit shows me glimpses of what I desire and what I want in life, and then I just say, like, "Show me how to get there. Show me the steps, show me what I need," and if we're so busy doing things and we don't allow that time to connect with ourselves without our phone, without, outside influences coming in, like, we won't be able to connect with that, and so it's yeah, it doesn't have to be hours at a time. Like, I do usually do not sit in a meditation for more than 15 minutes tops. And, just finding those ways of like even walking in nature. I went on a paddleboarding trip a couple weeks ago, and that allows me to kind of have a meditated state. And all these questions I've been searching the internet, trying to find through creators came to me in that time. And so it's
Amazing.
like, why am I working so hard outside of myself to get these answers? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
listen to Sarah because it's powerful when we give ourselves that time, right?
Yes, and even being in nature, or a good way that I like to look at it and to think about it too is to not think of it as loneliness, thinking of it as alone, because it's different. It's not that yearning for connection, it's connecting with yourself while being alone and just seeing what you need. So there's, some people think, well, I'm just so lonely, but if you transform that into alone and empower yourself with that, beautiful too. So that's what I mean about different meditation practices, like just going out paddleboarding or walking, that's a meditation practice too. And I really want people to start to realize that, because, you can go for a 5-minute walk and that's your meditation too.
Yeah.
There's many beautiful different ways to connect with your inner soul. And
Yeah. If you are open to it, would you like to see if some sort of mediumship or psychic messages come through? Or even, I do have a dog that's a little skittish. Any of it. I'm open to whatever may come through with you if anything comes at all.
sure. Let's see. Do you work with angels?
I've been calling in to my angels and guides every morning before I pull cards. And so I don't know who comes through, but so I call to both of them.
Okay. As soon as I started to connect into your energy, I saw a big angel, like angel energy. And I don't see that around a lot, or most people actually. So I feel, what is that? I feel like I'm seeing you being completely enveloped by this large male angel. And I'm sorry, I don't really work with angels, so I don't know who is who in the zoo, but but I just feel like you do have a lot of support from, I'm seeing like a rather large spirit team, and then this really large angel that like comes up, and it almost like a protection layer of his wings. I feel like I see just kind of encompassing your whole energy. Like he's really huge. I feel like he's been present. Like I feel like he's been making himself noticed and trying to bring in your attention. I feel like he's trying to kind of get your attention. He's there to support you and show you that you are on the right path. And I'm seeing like a yellow brick road. And that yellow brick road for me is a sign with spirit that there's change coming, because there's usually, like, I'm seeing a fork in the road. And this way is the yellow brick road, and then this way is into like an adventure of like a forest kind of thing. And I feel like there's guidance to go up this way, and I feel like you're going this way, but I feel like where there's little side adventures on this road. But I do feel like change that is yeah, I feel like that's change where you crossed the fork in the road and you're going on this direction, and it's really bright and shiny gold. I'm seeing a lot of yellow. So I feel like it's very much on the right path. The yellow to me symbolizes more so like a peace and a calmness about it. And there was this way that was quite an adventure, but more like kind of getting lost in the forest and lots of distractions, and not as much light is what I'm seeing. And then this way, they're showing me now that it's like you have this spirit team, and it's like the Tin Man and the Lion, and it's like a big spirit team going towards the right direction. And then it's like your soul is like the Wizard of Oz kind of thing. So it's like this road going toward the Wizard of Oz, because I feel like there's a few more changes coming for you too. That there's a change coming in. I feel like intuition, like there's something different that will come. How does that look? It's like I see the picture, and then I have to decipher it. So that's kind of what I do when I'm like, how do I say that? So they're showing me kind of like a little sidestep, I guess you would say, of delving deeper into, like, they're showing me going inwards. So a little bit more inner work coming up on the more masculine side. So I feel like it's starting to connect more to your divine masculinity as well, to have more of that yin and yang kind of thing. And then there's another one that's coming up, but it feels like it's more so towards the end of the year, and it's like a more of a femininity track. And what is that? I feel like there's a lot of I don't want to say changes. I don't feel like change is necessarily the right word, but deviations is kind of the word that comes to mind. So it's like still on your path, but then there's these other things that are being added to what you do and how you serve. I feel like it's more of like your servitude and making it in a way that not easier. Easier doesn't really encompass it. I feel like just makes it like different ways of connecting inward for yourself and then also inward for other people, helping people see their inner connectedness. And I see you helping people with like their nerves and nervous system. Like I'm almost seeing like a silhouette of someone that's just a whole bunch of nerves and a brain. So I feel like that is something that is on your path that's coming as well. But I do feel like divine masculinity, I feel like there's a shift coming there with your intuition. And then another thing, kind of more like, yeah, I just keep seeing like nerves, nervous system, something like that with the body. I'm just seeing like this silhouette with the nerves. Does any of that resonate with you?
Very much so. I've had a lot of secret projects in the works, and so I keep getting the message that it's coming and that I am someone that needs to kind of like one of the things I pride on is like getting the tools to kind of be that guide for other people. I've actually connected with some people who work on the nervous system, so that might be something with it. But I also know with human design, like I know sometimes it looks like that energetic circuitry could also maybe speak into it, but I'm not 100% with that.
Okay.
Everybody's always told me that I have a lot of protection and a lot of like entities around me. And so I think sometimes I do doubt that a little bit because I can't see them, but I feel them.
Okay.
So I think it's just more figuring out how that really speaks to me. I think one thing for me that I have a hard time with is like I always try to like connect with them through my crown, and I notice that I do much better when I'm grounded in my body. And so like I just feel like so many times when you're like trying to strengthen your like psychic abilities, like you think it's that way, and I
Yeah.
just find more in that groundedness. But I did want to show I had my aura read and they were like, "Oh my gosh, look at all like those are the orbs of protection
Oh,
and
wow.
pretty much angels and guides." And my friend was like, "Holy crap." I was like, cuz she got hers done too.
Right.
And so, yeah, I just feel like I need to strengthen that connection. And yeah, so much of that, the yellow brick road. I mean, I even have like a goal journal that like has a yellow brick road, like tell like that you write your goals out on it. And so like so much of that resonated. So
Oh,
thank you
perfect.
so much for sharing.
Yes, you're welcome.
And like I felt it. I felt the chills,
Oh, good.
and, now I feel like I'm gonna have to look up some angels and see what comes through because I went to a Mind, Body, Spirit Expo, a few weeks ago, and she had said I wanna say it was Archangel Michael that came through, so I might have to do that, but, yeah, I get so many comments of, like, "You are so protected more than you know," and that I do feel like there are people out there that, like, have it out for me, and that if it wasn't for these angels getting them off my path, because when I first started this, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of people that were just, like, trying to come for me, and it didn't make me feel good, and then it just stopped, and I was like but I also think I strengthened that connection with spirit, and they've been on my team ever since, so
Amazing. Yeah. One thing too that I wanna close off with is that they want to really, emphasize that there's no end where you get. It's not like there is an end to your yellow brick road. It's a constant path that is lifelong, and there's no "when I get there," because they do want me to say, "You're already there. You're just adding more into being there." So I just wanted to end with that.
yes, thank you. I've actually been really trying to be in that gratitude of like feeling like I'm already there and really having that practice of there were so many things, Kara, a hairdresser of 19 years, longed for. And I'm there. There are some missing pieces. And I think, honestly, the more I'm grateful for the things that I desired that I have now, like those things will come in. And yeah, just really try to be in the present moment of the now instead of like reaching and reaching for these goals. Because every time I would work through and hustle through and not listen to my body or my intuition, it leads us to burnout, right?
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. I love everything that we've talked about. But I think the most important thing is I want you to share with listeners your offerings and what you're up to and how they can connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I am a professional psychic medium. You can reach me at sarahpowell.ca. So at SERAHPOWELL.ca. I give professional psychic medium readings, animal communication reading. I am going on tour starting March 22nd across Canada for my mediumship. And I also am a spiritual mentor, and I have started to fulfill a calling to help people find soulfulness and connectedness in where they are in their careers and their jobs, and to help ignite their lives and their careers and level up to be a spiritual being while still at work. Because I feel like a lot of these programs that have been created in the last 5, 10 years, people are saying, I'll help you quit your job, but the world still needs nurses and dentists and hairstylists and all sorts of things. So I have created a program on how to create that soulfulness and connectedness with spirit while still maintaining the career that you've worked really hard for.
I love all that. I will make sure everything you offer and how to get a hold of you and everything in the show notes.
Perfect.
And I just appreciate your time and how we connected, and good luck on your tour.
Thank you.
And yeah,
Awesome.
we'll chat soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much for letting me use your platform and having a chat with you. It was a beautiful, beautiful gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. If this was your first time, welcome. And if you've joined me for previous episodes, thank you so much for coming back. Before you go, could you share my show with a friend and subscribe? Those few seconds make a big impact on my show, and I'd be grateful for the support. This interview with Sarah, I could feel the pain that she's been through and how she's transmuted it into something beautiful. This interview with Sarah really spoke to me in my heart, just hearing about all the things that she's been through to get to where she is today, how she's transmuted pain into helping others in their journey. If you want to find out how to connect with Sarah, check the show notes. All the links mentioned, any ads that have been mentioned in this episode will be at karadempsey.com/55. We'll chat soon.